Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, SeleniumConf London 2019 webinar. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you all know how to participate in today's event. You should see your GoToWebinar control panel in the upper right corner of your computer screen. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in your audio panel and your dial-in information will be displayed. If you've selected mic and speakers and are having any difficulty hearing me, please just toggle to telephone in your control panel and dial in. If you're experiencing any issues, please type in the details in the questions section of your control panel. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane on your control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Today's webinar is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view the recording. I would now like to pass the mic over to Marcus Merrell, who will be introducing our webinar.
All right, thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Marcus Merrell. I'm the technical director, the director of technical services with Sauce Labs, and I've been co-chair of the Selenium Conference Planning Committee for a little while now. And today we wanted to get a group of folks who will be speaking or participating in the conference this year and ask some questions, have some conversation, have some laughs, and talk about why everyone should want to go to this conference. So with that, I would like to start, by the way, my camera is off because we only have 6 cameras available and I wanted to make sure that all of our 6 lovely presenters are on at the same time. So we're going to go around now and have everyone introduce themselves. I want to start with Madalina Bejinariu because I just learned how to pronounce her name and I want to introduce her before I forget how to. Oh, audio is not working.
Sorry. Hi guys, I'm Madalina. I'm from Romania. I've been working in software testing for about 11 years now, and during the last 7 years I've done automated testing, and I've worked on my I always call it mine because I see it as my baby. Yeah. On my automated tests framework, and I encountered a lot of challenges throughout these 7 years. Challenges that I want to share with you guys on the Selenium conference at the beginning of October in London. And most important, it's not necessarily some sort of a collection of I don't know, faults or problems that I encountered, but also a set of lessons that I've learned that I believe are important to be shared with the community.
Fantastic. Great. I'll have some follow-up questions about that a little bit later. Let's move on to Aditi Mulay.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aditi. I'm currently working in Carson Solutions. It's based in Virginia, United States. I started off my career as a software developer, but at one point I was hired to build automation frameworks for a company. And since then, I loved automation enough to switch sides to automation. And I have been doing that for more than 10 plus years now. And my talk is actually concerning how we can use some of our development principles that I was using previously and bring them over onto building our automation frameworks. And thanks everyone for having me here.
No, it's great to have you here. Let's move on to Petra Bouskova at this point.
It's Bouskova, actually.
Oh, wow. Thought we had gone over this.
No, anyway, hello, my name is Petra Bouskova. I'm test manager. I'm working right now in software testing for, let's say, 5 years. I've done so many different jobs. Right now, I'm a test manager. And as Madalina said about the baby, my baby is my team. And when you are testing, you are always surrounded by people. And my team is my, let's say, baby. But this baby, let's say 1 year ago, almost died. It was crazy, screaming, annoying baby. And I wanted to quit, and my team wanted to quit. But after that, I just said, okay, let's start with communication skills, maybe. And I have jumped into insights discovery, and this is what I would love to share with the audience at Selenium conference, is how to communicate with different people based on very easy tips and tricks. And right now, I love my team, and my team loves me because I know how to approach everyone individually. So this is me and my team.
It's a fascinating dynamic. Having a colicky baby as a metaphor for a team seems about right. Raluca, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Marcus, and thanks for having me here. So I share a bit of my background with both Madalina and Aditi, meaning I'm from Romania, and I've started my career as well as a software developer back in 2006. I've moved to testing in 2011 when I transferred to Paddy Power Betfair, which I currently still work at. I'm now a delivery manager, which implies I'm responsible for development teams, projects, and so on and so forth, while still I am being involved in being sort of an automation evangelist in my company, as well as working on testing ways of working and performance testing and that sort of thing. And in my talk, which would be now my second Selenium conference, yay, I'll be touching on what is like to work on internal open source and what was like to implement that in our company. What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things we've learned? And just kind of changing our entire mentality and our entire ways of working, and how is that reflected onto testers, onto developers, and onto our ways of working.
That's interesting. I'm going to be curious to ask more questions around the delivery or release manager role that I've been seeing coming out of QA recently, and how you see that role evolving as we move forward. I need to finish the introductions though first, so let's go to Jim Evans. Jim Evans, you are no stranger to the Selenium community. Can you give us an introduction?
Sure. My name is Jim Evans. I am a core contributor to the Selenium project. If you work with Selenium in C# or if you use Selenium with Internet Explorer, you're using code that I'm responsible for and that I have spent a lot of time working on. At the conference, I'll be around being available to talk about Selenium and the things that are going on there. I'm also going to be taking part in the committers panel at the end of the conference, as well as helping out with the Fix a Bug, Become a Committer workshop that Simon Stewart is doing. And I'm looking forward to spending time in London.
Absolutely. All right, Wim.
Yeah, my name is Wim Selles. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm currently a solutions architect at Sauce Labs, but I've been in the industry for about 12 years now, mainly focusing on front end. Like to develop stuff in JavaScript, it's my favorite language, sorry Jim, and working also on a lot of open source modules to help testers, developers with developing test cases, reports, that kind of stuff. And really love to be here, and also I like to talk about some differences, what I see lately also in the community about people who used to work with Selenium and now move over to Appium, and especially to native apps, and kind of like make some assumptions on how the native app works. And I hope to kind of like explore those assumptions, dive into a little bit of code, explain some differences, and give people some more information about how native apps and Appium work together.
Great. What will your talk cover specifically?
All those topics I was mentioning.
Fair enough. Cool. Well, it looks like we're starting to get to know folks. I guess there's a question that that came from the submitters that I think it's a really interesting question, and it's going to deviate a little bit from the topic of your specific talks, but I wanted to go around the room and get a sense for test data preparation. Somebody's asking, how do you prepare test data for automated tests? And what do you do when the data sort of gets dirty after execution? How do you handle this kind of thing? I want to sort of let someone speak up and volunteer with kind of a best practice before we get back onto the topic of conference-specific talks. Five, four, three. So I'm going to call on someone.
Okay, well, it depends on. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, Aditi, I know you have opinions on this. You're muted. Aditi is muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So as I was saying, test data is one of the most important things as part of our automation, because that's one of the most critical thing. And the biggest problem that we face when running automation is you create some entities. After your test is done, you forget to clean them up and you get a messy environment after the end of it. So as part of our automation, I always make sure that we have something called as like a setup and tear down methods in place. Every time we complete our test case or a scenario, we make sure we are cleaning it up. Sometimes it's not possible from the front end, so you need to add some additional logic or infrastructure to go back to your database or any other entity and clean that data up. So it's critical, and I think it's one of the things that needs to be taken care of when you're building your automation framework.
Seems like a top of mind concern. Will this be covered in your talk?
Not completely, but I would surely like to give us probably a separate talk on this topic itself.
Yeah, that's great. I'd like to know for the group, how many of you attended Selenium Conference before speaking at it, or was it your first? Was attending it your first speaking at it your first? I don't know how to ask that question. You know what I mean? Sounds like. So I'm curious. When you went to Selenium Conference before speaking at it, was it inspirational to helping your career, or was it more like just sort of an opportunity to? Was it more about the networking, or was it more about the content?
I can take a stab at. Oh, sorry, Madalina, go ahead, please.
You're in.
I found it like I went to the Selenium conference in Berlin two years ago, and I found it inspirational, both the networking and also the content. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing, like the main takeaway from that conference, was my feeling of actually belonging to a community from all around the world. Like us testers, and I, how do you call it? I assume most of us are testers. We are a special breed, I think. We see problems and issues and code in a certain way and dealing with people. So, and the Selenium conference covered all this for me. Like I understood how and what people were talking about. It felt really inspirational.
Almost becomes a support group sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to add to what Madalina said, I also attended my first Selenium conference in Boston way back in 2013. Around that time, I was working with Selenium 1. Some versions. So it was a lot of things were sort of like getting figured out at that time. And it was really great to see other people also having some similar issues and to talk to them and see if there is a better way of doing what we were doing in our company. So I really liked that my first conference and the exposure that I got there, a lot of networking that happened and people I found that I could reach out to after the conference was over to talk about any issues that I came across. And last year was my first year speaking there, and I actually found amazing bunch of really smart people out there, and I found so many different things and ideas that I got to take back home with me and to work on them in my company itself. So I have been really grateful to all the Selenium conferences I have attended and for the great ideas that were shared during that.
Yeah. Well, Jim, I know you've seen this evolve both as a project and as a conference over the last 12-ish, 10-ish years. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like how you think it's going, where you think it'll go in the near far future.
Well, obviously, there are a lot of things that as a project, we want to bring to bear. We're feverishly working on Selenium 4, which is going to introduce some pretty interesting new capabilities, as well as a new, more modern architected grid solution, while still maintaining all of the compatibility with the existing code that you expect from the Selenium project. So in the near term, that's pretty exciting from a project level. Industry-wide, of course, there are a lot of other newer technologies that I don't think they quite do the same job as Selenium, though they're trying to be positioned as such. But it'll be interesting going forward to think about how we address the concerns of people who are trying to do a compare and contrast between Selenium and some of the other entries in the browser automation space and in the software automated testing space as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We could definitely rabbit hole on that particular topic. I'm gonna try to stay out of it and leave it for the conference, but I'm curious to know Wim's thoughts. I know you've been around for a long time, not on the browser automation space, but the Selenium conference question. You've been around other areas of testing before Selenium. See, Selenium, the reason I'm framing this question this way is that Selenium was the entry point for a lot of people into the world of testing. I am not sure that's the case with you. I'm curious to get your perspective, Wim, on attending this conference, speaking at this conference, and how it has shaped you as a tester developer.
Yeah, good question. My first conference was in London 2016, and then I was quite technical, so I wanted to attend all the technical sessions, and then in 2017 I was blown away by two presentations that really drew my attention. The first one was the State of the Union of Simon Stewart, who was giving a talk in Berlin and was kind of like talking about Selenium, but also about David Hasselhoff. That was really amazing. And the second talk that was kind of like, I had a conversation. We were there with a few colleagues of my previous company, and the night before the second day, we had a conversation about testing. About that's not always Selenium's fault, like everybody is sometimes saying. But you also need to look at yourself, because when you're pointing to someone, you're pointing with three fingers to yourself. So we had a conversation that night, and then the day after, I went to a talk of Richard Bradshaw, and he was giving a talk about your tests aren't flaky, you are. And yeah, that was kind of like the turning point for me, that a conference should not always be pure technical, but you should also think about strategical things, and also think about what you can do within a team, if you're developing automation, or if you're helping your colleagues, what you can do. And that kind of like made me think about my role as an automation engineer back then, and also made me think about what I wanted to do in the near future. So yeah, it helped me think about kind of like my career.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. Those of us who have made the change from being a QA person in an organization to going to work almost as a consultant full time, it's a big change. And conferences like this are where we get to talk and work on problems that I think are trying to help the industry overall, not just our own particular organization. And that's why I really enjoy having, Raluca, Petra, all these speakers come in and give us feedback that we can feed back into the whole community. And so yeah, I'm curious now, Raluca, I know that you are keynoting, are you not?
Yes, indeed I am.
Yes, so I'm curious to know what the difference, kind of blending from this conversation around attending versus speaking, how has your evolution gone from attending to speaking to now keynoting the conference? What is the difference in preparation you have to make?
Well, I think it was sort of, let's say, linear in a way. So I got to attend a few conferences, went on there, a few talks were interesting. Some of them, as with all conferences, didn't quite appeal to myself. Maybe they appealed to others, but I found myself kind of thinking, okay, I can do this. So I have stuff to talk about. Why am I not on there? So I have automation. I have a lot of things going on in my work that I could share with people, and that's kind of what got me into speaking in the first place. Speaking in several conferences and then now keynoting, I think the big difference is now I'm more nervous, and since last year, and I think that's never gonna go away until after my keynote. But in terms of preparation, for me, myself having a sort of a technical talk before, now I feel like a keynote might need to appeal to a wider audience, in a sense that not everyone is just after Selenium specific stuff or automation specific stuff, but more of a, you know, overall, maybe there are more than just automation testers in the audience, and you kind of need to try and appeal to everyone just to get your message across. Of course, if you get the message across to one person or 5 people or 10 people, it's still really valuable that someone can take what you've done and take back to your company. And in terms of Selenium, just to kind of close the circle there on what Wim said, I joined Selenium last year having not done a line of code in probably 2 years, since my job does not allow me time to do that anymore. And it was quite interesting to view the conference from that perspective as well, having worked with Selenium, having worked with API testing before, just to be able to kind of go to all the talks and appreciate, you know, even the technical ones, but more so the ones about processes, about people, about culture, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it makes me wonder, for Petra, I know that this is your third time speaking at Selenium Conference, or second? I don't recall. Second. We had you on a panel once, so I think I counted that as kind of twice. So I'm curious, as you are able to, you know, you've seen this conference evolve a little bit, and starting around the time that we had you speak first, we definitely focused on getting fewer technical talks and more cultural, more talks around the strategery, I guess, as Wim might have said, around. So what I'm wondering is, when you take the content home to your baby, your team, are you encouraging them to attend also, or do you think that you're able to take away and feedback into the whole community and make the whole process better?
You mean if I try to convince my team to go as well with me to the conference so they can get as well the information there, or I just transform it?
Yes, and also, are you able to, like, encourage them to acquire the skill set that you have acquired around speaking and that kind of thing? Are you able to inspire your team to sort of follow in your footsteps? Because I think you're serving as a mentor to your team, and I guess the question is, you know, have you found it to be successful? Is it a model that you would encourage others to follow?
I try my best, simply. And at the very beginning, I was always angry that they're not listening to me when I inspire them. But after that, I figured out I have to inspire each of them differently. So simply from some people, it's like conferences networking. So, hey, let's go to the conference. It's super cool. You can get something like a networking, meeting new people. From some people, I can inspire them, like get some technical skills. From some people, it's something different, so I can encourage them to jump on the stage. So it's different approaches for different people, simply. I try to convince them that the conferences are cool. Trying to be successful, it's better. It's getting better and better every year.
Understood. Well, let's stay on you for a second. We have a question that I like. I'm going to go everyone, give everyone a chance to answer this question. And it's like, if you had one pro tip to become a rock star tester, like what are you trying to use to inspire your team to become the next Jim Evans?
For me, super tester, when I got my first job testing for Mercedes, I asked my boss, what is the most important skill I have to have as a tester? And he told me curiosity. You have to be curious. You always want to get to know more. You want to go deeper. You want to everything. Curiosity for me.
Great. Jim, the reason I said that is I think you actually won an award called the Rockstar Award, if I'm not mistaken, from Salesforce. Wasn't it called something like that?
No, it was I was a recipient of a President's Award 2 years ago. Yes, I was. But that was specifically for some work that I did that saved us a bunch of money by converting a lot of tests from Selenium RC over to the more modern Selenium WebDriver engine. So yes, I don't know that I would not aspire to be the next me. I would aspire to be the next great you, whatever that is, in terms of in terms of your in terms of anyone's potential. Everybody is a little different in how they approach problems and technical testing tasks, and the advice I would give is to learn for yourself what that best technical skill is, and then you can play to your strengths, whether that is being more curious or being more detail oriented or being more engaging with your the people who design the features, your product owners and your developers who implement them. Whatever that superpower is, be self-aware enough to recognize that that's something you're really good at, so that you can play to that strength.
Cool. I think that's yeah. I mean, yeah. I could drill into that on your particular case, but I'm going to move to Madalina for the moment and see what's your tip for being a rock star tester.
The first thing that I thought of was being obsessed by what you're doing, like just going outside and walking around, I don't know, the town and thinking of your work. Like this might be a good thing, but also a bad thing. But like being persistent, being focused, staying focused on what you want to do. And also, like I want to add to what Jim said, like knowing your strengths, but also learning to ask for help whenever, like I learned that the hard way. Ask for help when you don't have the knowledge to achieve something. Because from the position of a super tester, like I'm the man, you know, I'm the woman or whatever. Like the bar is set very high, and some of us might feel awkward to ask for help. And this is where the communities are I don't know, most important. Like sharing your problems with others makes you like this
yeah,
a turbo boost for the engines.
That makes sense. I mean, what I'm trying to do before I move on to Aditi, what I'm trying to do in my role at Sauce Labs is trying to figure out how to scale the superheroes in the organization. That's, to me, if I were to pinpoint one big problem in QA, it's that when the hero who built the automation thing leaves, they generally just throw it out and start over. It happened at a company I was at for 7 years, and they threw out 7 years worth of work because I didn't scale what I was doing to the rest of the org, or I did, and those people quit before I did, or something like that. So that's the thing I'm trying to figure out, and it's going to become the subject of a lot of stuff that I'm working on personally. Sorry, I didn't mean to get on to me. Aditi, what is your tip for being a rockstar tester?
Before I answer that question, I just want to add on to what you just said. You were talking about things that you build, and when you leave or move to another team, they get sort of like orphaned and literally thrown out. I also feel the same way. So that's my baby, my automation framework. The code I write is my baby. So I always think of it as perfect and the way it works. So it's really difficult to give up on that. But to avoid for it to be getting orphaned, I normally try and see if I can make it as easy or as accessible using documentation or demos, or a way that I can leave that legacy behind before I move to another team. That's what I try to do on my side, because I get literally emotionally attached to my projects. So that's not a great thing all the time, but that's how I have been dealing with it. moving on to your question about the rock star, it's a difficult question. It's not just one quality that would probably make a rock star. It's just to become an awesome tester, you need to be the subject matter expert, probably have the technical skills, curiosity, and passionate about what you're doing. But the way I try to think of as a rock star is anytime you are seeing something, try to figure out a way to improve things. Find out what is missing in this. How can I make my work life easier? And try to come up with smarter ways rather than doing more work. How can I just be smarter and do less work? So someone had told me this recently, that you have to be lazy to be a good developer or a good tester. And lazy does not mean not doing your work, just being more smarter about it. And that's what I think, if you achieve that, that would be an amazing way to rise up and become a good rockstar tester.
A lot of nodding heads around the panel. That laziness thing really, you know, I think we all get it, that it's not about not wanting to work. It's about not wanting to do the same thing over and over and over and over again, and being obsessed about making sure that you only have to do that thing once. Great. Raluca, what do you think?
I think to add to what my co-panelists have said, just go out and talk to people. Sometimes the answers to your questions are not in your team, or the answer to your future questions that you might not know now, or your future bugs might reside in infrastructure, in DevOps, in networking, in the environment where your application is being deployed, not necessarily your application, because at least in my experience, once we kind of went through the hurdles of all the application bugs, of all the functional bugs, we went into infrastructure territory. So communication between services, deployment, and so on and so forth. So maybe, you know, just casually, you know, talk to the guys in infra. What are our servers looking like? So how's the deployment? Where does reside? How does this communicate to the other thing? And these kind of things. And it pops into curiosity, as Petra said. It pops into being sort of a subject matter expert as well, but more so of knowing your entire environment, not only your functional code or your application.
Yeah. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Wim, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we heard already a lot about what I wanted to say. So everybody kind of like throw away all my answers. No, but if I get a lot of questions also about how can you become kind of like a rock star as a technical tester, especially for people who want to start testing. And the first answer I give them is stop focusing on doing the automation. First, become a good manual tester, because then you can kind of like make a difference if you need to automate it, yes or no, what the business value would be of automating it, yes or no, thinking about good cases. And when you know that, when you know how to be a good manual tester, then you also know how to write your scripts. And then maybe you need to have some technical guidance. And then I would say, okay, if you're in a team with some good developers that would like to help you, try to learn from them, but also give them something back, because you also have some skills. Give them back your skills. And I think if you do that, you will become a good team player with your manual skills, your technical skills. I think then you can become a real good technical rock star tester, test automation engineer. Depends on what name you want to give it. With all the other answers the panelists already gave, I think, yeah, that will be the way to go to become the rock star.
That's great. Yeah, a lot of nodding heads. I think we're in agreement. All right, post the job description, and I think we'll be set. So I want to follow up with Raluca on this concept of delivery or release manager. It feels like a role that you have moved into, right? And this is where I really want to encourage everyone to start asking other questions, because I feel like there's a real conversation to be had here over the evolution of QA. It's happening right now, whether we like it or not. There's a lot of traditional QA folks. There's a lot of automation, traditional SDET type folks. But then there's this whole corner of the industry that's evolving into DevOps, release management, infrastructure. I want to get, Raluca, your thoughts on your personal evolution, but then I want us to get talking about what we all think about this evolution that's happening right now.
So I think kind of my job title is a bit wonky in a way, just because of how our organization has evolved. We're kind of, let's say, team leads, managers of some sort, but they just wanted to give us a sense that you're not a test manager, you're not a development manager, but you're a delivery manager, which means you're in charge of delivering projects in a way. However, in recent time, due to the introduction of self-organizing tribes and squads and so on, I feel I've taken on the hat of release manager in a way for my own application or services, just because of the way the team works. So for example, we have an application, we offer second line support for it, which means a developer or a tester is now on call for that application, which means I wouldn't let anyone just releasing anything into production, because my developers and myself get called out at night, during the night, just to keep the lights on, let's say. And I've kind of taken on the role of, okay, everyone can contribute to the code, but I say what goes into production, when it goes into production, and, you know, not the traditional release manager role, because I have other stuff to do, to be honest, and I don't want to be responsible for everyone, you know, have you done your tests, have you done your pipeline, but just saying sort of an overview of, okay, this team has to release this feature related to this project, can these two be merged together, when is your launch date, what do you know, do you have, what do you want to do with the application I'm in charge with, which means everyone in my organization is kind of in the same role right now. I think the way we are structured kind of forces us into this role. I think traditionally 7 years ago we had the proper release manager in a way. He was, you know, coordinating everyone's releases with release plans and timelines, but we've kind of moved away from that. That was before continuous delivery. We've moved away from that role, but I feel like I've seen in recent years more and more people saying, oh, I'm the release manager, oh, I decide when what goes, I do merge requests, I do a lot of stuff. And this addition of DevOps has kind of brought so many roles that were not traditional in the delivery teams, in the development teams. And I think it's a good thing. So we have some diversity in terms of roles, and people who have different perspectives on the system.
Is anyone else starting to get involved in that level of conversation in their day-to-day role? The reason I ask is because I was very much doing a similar thing at my last job, and I feel like it's happening everywhere, but am I wrong about that? Does there anyone else?
I have a question actually for Raluca, if I can ask. So if I understood well, it was from one day to another. So you got the label like release manager, and I would like to ask how your team dealt with it. Is like how did they feel about it? Like from one day to another, did you know your what you have to do, your tasks and so on? Weren't they confused, or you were confused, or was it like clear? Right now I am this, and I will do this.
I don't think it was more of a label, but more of a thing we need to do just to keep going. So if I wouldn't have stepped into the role of, okay, I need to organize what everyone's doing and when everyone's releasing, we would have gotten nowhere. And just saying, okay, everyone would have done it when they saw fit, and then we would be left picking up the pieces and maintaining a component that we had no idea what it does. And I think in terms of my team, my interaction with them have not changed. So they have not been affected by me taking on this as well. But you know, they see it as, yeah, it's work, someone has to do it, and I have to step up to that role.
Right. It's interesting. So with that in mind, this idea of this kind of evolution, which may or may not actually be happening, come to think of it, I'm curious to know from Aditi and Madalina, you both have been working on these very, what I perceive as long-term projects in test automation. And I'm curious to know if you believe you will still be kind of working on them for the next couple of years, or do you think they'll be evolving also?
I'm going to let Aditi.
Okay, so this is my experience. When you're working on long-term projects, automation is not just done in like one iteration. You do it and then you raise your hands and say, I'm all done. That has never been the case. A lot of things keep on changing. The technologies change. You are trying to catch up with different browsers or different tool sets. And sometimes, of course, the enhancements are also coming in. So automation is never done in one iteration. You just keep on iterating. You find out better ways of doing some things, and you keep on improving your own project. So it's never in the done state from my point of view. I see myself probably continuing on this, but I would in future, I'm actually interested in what Raluca is doing out there, moving into a little bit more DevOps and testing out there. Because when I started working, testing used to be only like more like a waterfall. You finish development, you start off testing, and then you release. But if you have seen that infinite loop of software development these days, every point in that loop where you're doing building, releasing, there's testing involved. And that is where I would like to actually move into rather than just be focused on the functionality side of it right for now.
Madalina, anything to add?
From my point of view, I mean, my framework is pretty mature right now. And the direction in which I would like it to go, it would be to implement some sort of machine learning algorithm so as to optimize the selection and also the prioritization of the test cases, because I have a huge amount of tests. I would have, if I would run them all, a huge amount of tests that run every day. So I had to think it through a bit. And as Aditi said, it's the whole testing thing. It's automated testing thing. It's incremental. Like when I started working for my framework, like I don't know, 6-7 years ago, I was doing this, and now I'm doing like this, and I have to adapt. And the way I see it is to implement some machine learning algorithms. So
fascinating. That sort of lends into my
interesting, but I'm just curious, is anyone here who has machine learning experience? Because from what I have seen with machine learning at this point, all I won't say all, but whatever I know, I'm aware of is one thing I saw was like locators. If you change your locators, but the functionality behind them is the same, then the machine learning algorithms will make sure that your test passes, because they can figure out that even if your submit button becomes a save button, the functionality behind it is still the same. So that is the level of machine learning that I have seen happening out there. I don't know if it's as sophisticated or mature enough to say, okay, now make sure that my test passes even if I change the functionality a little bit or add some new changes to it, right?
If I may respond.
Yes. Yes.
So there are several, I don't know, fields in which machine learning, as much as I've read about it and attended conferences again. One is with the adaptive test cases, like test cases that adapt to the changes that can happen in your web pages. And the side of it that I'm kind of focused on, it's the test case selection. Like I have a huge test set or suite or whatever you want to call it. And like I want to know what test cases should I run based upon priorities and stuff like that. So it's test case selection. Right. The test in itself stays the same, the locators and the steps.
Right.
But like the selection from the
like a filtered way of test execution. Right. So exactly. If this part of your code changes, what is the subset of tests that need to be executed to make sure everything is fine?
Pretty much.
I feel like Wim to add to this.
Yeah, I was also thinking it was a good remark about from Aditi about that you know if you touch a certain piece of code which test cases you need to run. I think that would be kind of like a real good addition for machine learning. But what I hear a lot from people is that they want to use machine learning just to determine the value of the test cases, and I think that's not kind of like the thing where we should use machine learning for, because if I refer to one of my first remarks, you need to know what you need to test. You need to know your business value, and you need to add some parameters or whatsoever to your test case to determine the value. And each test case you're going to write should have some value. Otherwise, you should just throw away that specific test case. So I wonder if machine learning will really help doing that, determining the value of a test case.
Most definitely, yes.
Yes,
I doubt it.
I definitely
No, but you have to have an expert. You have to have an expert.
You have to have an expert. I think
business expert.
There's definitely some thoughts around tying the test case value to user analytics that would get you partially there, but hasn't been done yet. So anyway, I don't want to go off too much in that rabbit hole, although I could have a whole hour discussion on it. It's definitely interesting. I'm curious to back up just a little bit or go a little bit higher in altitude. Maybe for Jim, Petra, Raluca, do you think that that the AI machine learning conversations that are happening around testing, all the venture capital that's being thrown at companies who have an interesting story to tell, is it hype, is it fantasy, or are you seeing that it's actually getting done?
I'll go ahead and speak up. I don't know that we're quite there yet. I don't know that we have a lot of. I mean, I know there is some exciting work being done in that area, and you know, but I don't think I have not yet seen a product or project that really kind of excites me yet and makes me realize, okay, machine learning, AI, whatever you want to call it, has arrived as a you know, as a technique that we can put in our tool bag and pull out and use when appropriate. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we will be, but I'm not sure we're there yet.
I'm just wondering if the Selenium conference in 8 years is going to be the machine learning and AI testing browser automation kind of. I don't know. I mean, it sure feels from my perspective like it's going to be a while. But anyone else have any opinions on that?
I think
I'll say, sorry. So from my perspective, I work in a highly regulated environment. So having AI out of your head, it's not something we can do quite easily, although people want to kind of get their feet wet. And I've seen some projects around that kind of want to touch on maybe personalization with the help of AI and stuff like that. But sometimes I feel like I'm the odd person out at the conference with everyone's like, oh my God, AI, this is the new talk, this is the new thing. And yeah, I'm not really doing it. I don't understand. So, I mean, I understand what value it might bring, but I mean, I think I'm there with Jim saying I don't think we're there yet. So I think we're gonna be hearing about all this new stuff for a lot of years before anything kind of goes and says, okay, it's mainstream, everyone's using it. There's at least some AI component to probably all or most of the companies out there. But I think we're a bit far from that.
Madalina, you had something to add? You're muted.
I work in a small company, so this is why it's probably the difference between the company that I work for and the one that Raluca works for. It's not necessarily that the processes aren't regulated. They are, but there's a bit of let's try and do this. with this help, and probably it helps the fact that I'm the only coding engineer from the automation team. So I can like play with it a bit, but I also don't think it's necessarily mature. The whole AI thing, it's like there's the hype curve, if you know, like there's this, we're on top of the curve. Things have to settle like in the next years, so as to become mainstream.
Yeah, mainstream is the word. That's the word I was going to key in on is mainstream. And I know Wim and I are in conversations frequently where I say this a lot, but you know what? It seems like talk of AI is becoming mainstream, and a lot of things are sort of becoming mainstream, but what is not becoming mainstream in my experience is people actually being wildly successful with what they're already trying to do. That has not yet taken hold and become mainstream or normal. People are still struggling with this project, with this problem of test automation every single day, and are fundamentally not as successful as I think people should be. We hear failure rates of 20%, 30%, at which point you question what value you're getting at all out of test automation. So leading from what we think of is going to happen in 5 years to what we think of is going on right now, do you have any sort of personal metrics? I'll start with Petra since she hasn't talked in a while. Do you have any sort of personal red flags? Do you have any standards that you hold your test automation to that you believe are above what I think is mainstream, which is we don't know what we're doing, we're kind of throwing a bunch of tests at this and a lot of them fail? Do you have any success stories that you're particularly proud of Selenium test automation that you've implemented?
Well, I just wanted to actually add before I answer the question that it depends, from my point of view, it depends on the industry and it depends on the company. I was working for a few years for Mercedes for automotive testing, and there was 99% of the tests automated. Then I came to the conference and there was like, automation is the topic. And I was like, why everything is automated? Why automation is the big topic? And then I changed to the web application, and then we were starting with automation. Agile was okay, like more or less working, but automation was the topic. And right now I'm working in banking. Again, completely different industry, completely different approaches to testing. And we starting with Agile, like, okay, we have a whiteboard and sticky papers. So we are Agile. So they're like machine learning and everything connected to the automation is absolutely out of topic. So I just wanted to emphasize this. It really depends on the industry and on the topic and on the company, this automation. So no one knows actually where it goes. It depends.
Right.
And yeah, this is what I wanted to share with you. So
yes,
this is my point of view.
Thank you. Shoot, I had a follow-up question, then I realized that the time has gotten away with us. We have 5 minutes left. Wanted to, somebody who has submitted a question, actually it's not a question, it's a statement, but I think it's interesting. Machine learning will have a lot of influence in getting right test cases going forward. It will work with live data to provide the insight on test data, which will be used for test scenarios. This, once again, sounds great in theory. I haven't yet seen that applied. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on how likely it is that we will be using tools that generate this kind of insight in the near future, even in the long-term future.
I think this is kind of like the chicken and egg story also, because if you want to kind of like generate test cases and get value out of your test cases based on how your customers are using your application, then your application is already out there, meaning you should have had your test cases already there. So for me, this is kind of like the chicken egg story. What should come first? So it's good to know how your customers are using and try to adjust your script to how your customers are using it. But if you would also look at how teams are currently working, they build a feature, they test the feature goes to production. They need to maintain it because it's already out there, but they have hardly any time to adjust their test cases to add new user scenarios to them. So I think it's not only the machine learning that needs to change the behavior, it's also the organization itself that needs to change and needs to realize that when the feature is out there, they also need to kind of like make a reservation of some time to adjust the feature or to adjust test cases based on user usage. And I think, and I see a lot of people already nodding here in the panel, but I think if you would look at customers, that not a lot of customers have the time or give you the time to do kind of like some adjustment after a feature is live, because you need to work on the new feature.
Yeah, absolutely. Perennially understaffed, and the process is usually not hammered out to a point of stability that will scale, and we're always running behind.
Exactly.
So, speaking of running behind, we have approximately 2 minutes left. Wanted to see if there's any parting thoughts on why you think people should attend the conference, and basically what you think people should try to get out of it. I'm just going to ask. I'm not going to go around the room. We don't have time, but who has something compelling to say around that?
I think that one of the great things I love about Selenium Conference is the chance to get to meet all the great people who are using the project in ways that we as the core contributors could have never envisioned. And it's one of the highlights of some of my time, is to be able to sit and talk and chat with people who are using the project. So come to the conference. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to talk with you. I'd love to find out what you're doing with all of our wonderful stuff.
Yeah, my favorite part is trying to encourage people to contribute, give back to the project, and learn more about how it all works together, because it's one of those things where it's an unusual project in that the people who contribute to it are not necessarily experts in how it is used, and vice versa. The people who use it are not necessarily experts in how you would contribute to it, and vice versa. So it's difficult, and I'm always trying to bridge that gap, and it's very difficult to do.
I think also coming to the conference is also getting to know all the love people have for their job and also for open source. And I think for me, Selenium Conference was also an eye-opener to contribute to open source. Not only to Selenium, I must admit I haven't been committing a lot of stuff to the Selenium project, but I think the Selenium project is kind of like, for me, the founding father for automation and open source automation out there in the world. And I think people should just come to the conference and kind of like get the love and the energy, and also help contributing back to the open source community.
Yep. And with that, I think we'll end up concluding this. I want to thank everyone for participating today. It's been wonderful to have you. I wish we had 3 more hours. And that's it from here. Ryan, you want to take over? I actually don't remember if.
All right, thank you all for joining, and we hope you have a great rest of your morning, evening, afternoon. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.